Lyra's anxiety isn't just about finding her sister Erica, but also the looming threat of Rikkard. If Rikkard discovers the truth about Morgan, what will happen? Can Lyra protect herself and her mates? If you want to know how Caspian and Marius search for Erica under Rikkard's shadow, don't forget to subscribe to our channel. 87. Caspian. I was apprehensive about going to Kersas because of numerous reasons. Primarily because it was close to Rikkard's snow court. I was sure our presence there would attract unwanted attention from him. He already knew we were pursuing Morgan with the same keenness. Still, I didn't want him to know about any of the current developments because he'd end up getting too invested in our business, and that was the last thing I wanted to happen. If he got too involved, he might discover the truth about Morgan, ultimately putting Lyra in danger. I couldn't let that happen. I'm more worried about Rikkard than the possibility of Erica not being in Kersas, I told Marius gingerly. I could tell he had the same thoughts but was eager to go to Kersas and find Erica. Once he knows we're in Kersas, he's going to come down to see us, I added. I know, Marius grunted, his face pensive, but we cannot avoid going to Kersas. The only way we'll find out if Erica is there or not is by going there. Yeah, that's another problem. We don't know where to look, I said, rubbing my chin. I'm thinking of calling the city councilor and asking for all the details of the residence, Marius said. I could tell that he was still profoundly thinking about it. He was the one who was good with things like this, dealing with the bureaucracy. My patience was too thin to deal with those people. And you think he'll just give it to you? I asked. I'll wring it out of him if I have to, but I will get it somehow. Apart from that, I'm thinking of talking to Cedric of the North Moon Pack. His territory is close enough to Kersas and he might be able to help us out. That'll definitely get Rikkard's attention, I groaned. I didn't want to see him again after talking to Rikkard on the video call that day. Whenever I interacted with him, he managed to get on my nerves. That day I disliked how he talked down to Lyra. The only reason I didn't throw my fist that day was because it was a virtual call. I'd have taken him to hell for disrespecting my mate if it were a physical meeting. I doubted if I'd be able to keep it civil if I saw him the next time. And he opened that cursed mouth of his. We cannot avoid Rikkard, Marius sighed. But we'll find a way to deal with him one thing at a time. I'll be on the call with the Kersas counselor soon. Start preparing for the journey. I intend to leave tonight. I grunted and left the office to call our private pilots and the other aviation crew to prepare for our flight tonight. I checked the patrolling duties, made some changes and attended to other pack matters. After dealing with everything, I went to the library to see Lyra. I had been craving for her so fucking much, but the backbreaking work was keeping me from her. Some days I dreamt of just disappearing with her in the woods with my brother and staying in a cabin without a care in the world, enjoying my mate to the full extent. But alas, everything was so chaotic. It didn't help that we hadn't completed our mating bond yet. My brother and I were desperate to mark Lyra and complete the bond ultimately, but her wolf was still taking time to go into heat. It was important for her wolf to go into heat for us to mark her, or else her wolf and body might reject the marks. More patience was required in this situation, but that was the very thing I lacked the most. I opened the library door and stepped inside to find Lyra's computer cramped there. She had them all laid on the floor where she was currently sitting. She was too consumed in her work to have noticed my presence. I snuck behind her silently and bent behind her. She let out a yelp as soon as she noticed my presence, making me chuckle. She frowned at me while I wrapped my arms around her and pulled her against me before filling my lungs with her intoxicating scent. My wolf howled for her, wanting to be closer to her. My pussycat is so fucking busy, I muttered, slipping my hand under her blouse and cupping her breast gently before giving her a good squeeze. She squirmed under me but didn't fight my touch. And you haven't been busy, she shot back. I sighed deeply. I couldn't pay attention to her properly because I had been so busy with work. It was one of my negative tendencies to get sucked into work completely once I put my mind to anything. Currently, my main goal was to find Erica and stop he from whatever colossal fuck-up she had planned. Seeing Lyra get more and more anxious day by day made this tendency worse. But it only seemed to backfire because I hadn't been able to pay proper attention to my pussy cat. I'm sorry for that, my pussy cat. I know I haven't been able to give you want, I whispered in her ear while slipping my other hand into her pant to seek her clit. Meanwhile, I continued to knead her breast with the other hand to stimulate her. The way she moaned when I touched her clit made me claim her lips right away. I drank all her moans while I worked her breast and pussy all the same time. I dipped my ring and middle finger inside her, and found her rough spot before drawing small circles around it. She tore her lips away from me and cried out in pleasure while her hips buckled uncontrollably. "Please. That feels good, but I need your knot," she whimpered, squirming. I didn't stop stroking her and continued to play with her cunt. "I know, pussycat. My knot is eager for your cunt too. It's so fucking tight with so much seed. Do you want me to fill your cunt with it?" I whispered seductively while I continued playing with her. I knew she wouldn't last long, but that was the case with me too. "Yes. Please, I need your knot. I feel so empty," she cried. And the way her pussy clenched around my fingers almost made me lose control. "I'll give you my knot if you come for me first," I told her, digging into my pocket to get the toy. I licked it before slipping it in her cunt. "Caspian," she whined as I turned it on. It didn't take her long to come around my fingers. The toy still fluttered inside her as she collapsed against me, breathing hard while she rode the high of her organ. I unzipped quickly and pulled out my tight and painful knot. "Bend for me, pussycat. Ass up in the air and spread your legs for me," I ordered, and she obeyed, tugging her pants down for me to see her round ass and her creamy thighs, but most importantly, her slick slit, which was dripping with her juices. I couldn't help but give her a hard spank. She squirmed with need while I rubbed my tip against her wet folds. The toy was still fluttering inside her. I didn't take it out of her cunt yet, and its tail still stuck out of her pussy. I nudged it aside and thrust inside her unit my cock, and my whole knot was seated deep inside her, along with the fluttering toy. Feeling it against my knot, while also having her pussy clenching hard around me, pushed me so close to release. I pulled back, thrust inside her roughly, and picked her hard and fast, chasing my orgasm. Lyra was moaning under her, her thighs quivering. Yes, use my cunt just like that. Please don't stop. I need it," she kept muttering under me, and I grew rougher with my thrusts. She was a moaning mess under me as I thrust deep inside her, seating myself fully in one thrust. Lyra came around me instantly while my knot and balls clenched. My knot started throbbing as it released my seed into her womb. The toy was still fluttering inside her and against my knot, easing us both at the same time. I wrapped my arm around her middle and pulled her into my lap, keeping my knot still inside her. Not that it wanted to leave her pussy so early. The way it was throbbing inside her, I could see that we were going to be stuck for a while. Not that I minded. Such a good pussy cat, taking her mate's knot so well and letting him use her cunt. I whispered in her ear while I stroked her throbbing clit. She whimpered, breathing hard and completely boneless in my lap. "My cunt is yours to use whenever you want," she whimpered. "It has been craving for you too for the past couple of days," she groaned. "I know. I'm sorry for not giving you my knot earlier. I know Marius is busy too, but I'll tell him to knot you up soon," I promised her. "Until then, drain my knot as much as you can. We have a long journey ahead." I groaned at the thought of going to Kersas but was pleased with a heated kiss on her shoulder. She sighed deeply before letting me claim her lips. 88. Marius. It was late in the evening, and I had finally managed to wrap up the pressing pack work. I even talked to Kersas city councilor, who agreed to help us look for Erica. It had been surprisingly easy to talk him into it. I pulled some strings through a neighboring pack, Alpha, which worked well in my favor. Caspian and Lyra were ready to leave and waiting for me when I returned home. I could tell that Caspian had tried to take care of Lyra's ongoing anxiety, but she still seemed fidgety. Her restlessness deeply irked me. I hated seeing her stressed out or even anxious. She had been overly anxious for the past few days, spending most of her time in the library. I wanted to tend to her, but something in the pack would always come up, and I'd have to leave her to take care of it. I could tell that she was craving my presence, my touch, my cock, and my knot. However, she had been too anxious and preoccupied with the current ordeal to ask for me. Now that we were going away from the pack for a while and would be in the air, I knew the perfect way to make it up to her. We left for the airport as soon as I got home. The drive to the airport was mostly filled with discussions of the plan. I told them what I had gotten from the counselor of Kersas and what we would do once we landed there. We also discussed how we would deal with Rikkard if and when he showed up to see us and tried to insert himself into the situation. As soon as we boarded the plane and it took off, things seemed to settle. Lyra was sitting beside me, staring out of the window and deep in her thoughts. Caspian sat across me, typing away on his phone, most probably talking to the cyber team to check for any updates. I placed my hand on Lyra's thigh, and instantly my wolf stirred. He'd been wanting her and craving for so fucking much, yet work had kept me away from her. But no more. Until we landed in Kersas, we had nothing else to do but either talk or fuck, and I was very enthusiastic about the second option. As soon as I touched her, she straightened slightly before glancing at me. I slipped my hand between her legs and cupped her over her pants. She sucked in a breath, and a small moan left her lips as she spread her legs for me. That small action of hers was enough to break my control. I pulled her into my lap and hooked her legs on either side of me to expose her core. When Caspian noticed this, he put his phone away and sat back with a smirk, ready to watch us. I started gently stroking her mound, pulling a whimper out of her lips. "Marius," she breathed, resting her head back on my shoulder. "Did you miss my knot, baby girl?" I asked. Yes, she squirmed under my touch. The scent of her arousal thickly perfumed the air around us. Caspian's nostrils flared as he scented her, but instead of doing anything, he watched. That was what he seemed to be the most interested in. "How much did you miss my knot?" I asked, unzipping her pants and slipping my hand into them to find her soaking for me already. "Very much," she whimpered, making me groan. I stroked her throbbing bundle of nerves, making her squirm even more. "Get up and take your clothes off," I told her, and she huffed but obeyed me anyway. Caspian and I watched her strip herself slowly, taking her time to undo all the buttons of her blouse before letting it slip off her shoulders. She bent at a salacious angle to pull her pants down, showing off her beautiful round ass and her wet panties before she straightened up and stepped out of her pants. The more I watched her, the more I wanted to pin her down and fuck her like a wild animal in heat. Caspian was watching her with the same intense hunger as well. His eyes followed every single action and movement of hers. I hungrily eyed her swell of breasts. They had grown so much since she had come to us. I loved how they strained against her clothes now, deepening her cleavage. Her pink nipples were tight and jutting for attention. "Bend forward and show me your ass," I commanded when she was done stepping out of her soaked panty. I wanted to reach out and knead her breasts so badly, but I held myself back. I had something special for her in mind, and I was eager to see how she'd react to that. However, she tested my reins as soon as she obeyed me and bent forward to expose her ass to me. It had some red marks. She was sore after Caspian had fucked her, and even in this state she wanted me. "Did my brother use your cunt?" I asked, touching her mound and slathering her juices all over her folds. "Yes," Lyra whimpered and Caspian smirked at me. "Did you drain his knot well?" I asked, continuing to slather her juices over her cunt but slowly edging towards her back hole. With the other hand, I undid my zip and pulled out my throbbing cock and bloated knot. "Yes, I let him use me," she whimpered, her legs trembling a little as I played with her cunt opening but didn't dip my fingers into her yet. I could tell it was making her impatient and simultaneously pushing her to the edge. "Good girl," I told her. "I'm going to use you now," I told her darkly. "Please use me," she pleaded. "Yes, fuck her raw." "I want to see her trembling on your knot," Caspian growled. I spared him a glance to see him watching us hungrily. I rose from my seat and rubbed the tip of my cock against her wet folds. She made an impatient nose and tried to wiggle against my cock, trying to align her cunt hole to my tip. I spanked her hard, making her whimper and her legs tremble. "Stay still, baby girl, or else you're not going to get it," I growled. "Let him use you the way he wants to use you, pussycat," Caspian told her. "Give it up to him or else he's not going to let you come. Please." "Marius," Lyra whimpered as I continued to rub my tip over her, taking my time to spread her wetness all over. "Stay still," I growled and she stopped at once. "Look at me," Caspian said on the other side. "I want to see your face while my brother uses you." I grunted at his words because it made her wetter. When I was done perfectly lubing her back hole and my cock with her wetness, I dragged my tip to her back hole. She froze when I started pressing my tip against that hole. "Marius," she moaned, a hint of surprise in her voice. "Look at me, pussycat, or else you're not going to get it," Caspian said, and she obeyed him immediately. I entered her tight hole slowly but steadily. She clenched around me, but I forced in, seating myself up to the edge of my knot. Lyra was quivering under me while my knot pulsed angrily against her tight hole, wanting entry. "He's using your other hole, isn't he?" Caspian asked, amused. Tell me, how does it feel? He demanded. It feels good, she answered, still trembling. I groaned and thrust in until my knot was inside her too. She cried out loud while I wrapped my arm around her middle and sat back with her in my lap and my knot inside her. She spread her legs, exposing everything to Caspian. So beautiful with my brother's knot, Caspian commented, and she clenched around me. Now ride me, baby girl. Make your hole get used to my knot because it's going to be spending a lot of time there, I told Lyra, and she half groaned and moaned before moving her hips. Look at her go, Caspian whispered. I reached forward and stroked her clit while she gently rocked her hips to fuck herself with my knot. Does your cum feel empty, pussy cat? Caspian asked. Yes, she whimpered. Please give me your finger, Marius. I'm clenching hard, she begged. I've something better. Caspian smirked before slipping me the small toy that was now her favorite. She gasped at the sight, but before she could say anything, I turned it on and slipped it into her pussy, and instantly her hips buckled. I could feel the toy flutter against my knot through her parting wall. This made me want to rut in her intensely. She was fucking me slowly, but I didn't want that. I wanted more. I'm going to use you now, baby girl, I told her. You're going to tell me if it hurts. She nodded before I held onto her hips and started thrusting in her uncontrollably. Lyra was moaning my name with her head resting back on my shoulder. Caspian watched me fuck her darkly. He had his knot out and was stroking it while watching her hungrily. This made me fuck her harder until she was a trembling mess over my knot. The toy kept fluttering inside her until she came hard, clenching around me before squirting hard. I came soon after, draining all the seed my knot had stored for her. My knot inflated with fresh seed while pulsing harder inside her, locking us together. Lyra lay wasted in my arms, trembling and wasted from the orgasm. Caspian groaned, reaching his release. He stood up and shot his seed all over her chest and stomach before collapsing back in his seat, his knot still hanging out of his pants. That was so good, Lyra whispered after catching her breath. Thank you for using me, my mates. You're welcome, baby girl, I told her possessively while my knot pulsed away angrily inside her, not intending to let her go for a while. You're gonna get used like this every day from now on, pussycat, Caspian said, and I couldn't have agreed more with that. 89, Lyra. The following morning, I woke up snuggling against Marius, whose arm was heavily draped over my waist. We were crammed into the small bedroom at the back of their private jet. Not that I minded it. I sighed and snuggled against him, bathing in his warmth and incredible scent. It hardly happened when I woke up to find Marius still in bed. Most days it was Caspian, but today I was glad I woke up to have Marius beside me. However, nothing could ever beat the feeling of waking up with both of my mates together. I felt sore from yesterday's action, but my wolf and I were fully content. It had helped ease all the built-up anxiety I had for the past couple of days. I drew small circles on Marius's arm while I heard him breathing lightly against me. He stirred in his sleep a bit before pulling me closer to him and placing a soft kiss on my cheek. I couldn't help but smile at that. I turned to place a small kiss on his cheek while stroking his arm gently. Are you awake, Marius? I whispered, and he hummed in response. His morning voice was husky, the sound of it making something flutter in my stomach. Yes, baby girl, he responded after a few seconds. His voice was so beautiful, and his chest rumbled as he spoke. Did you sleep well? He asked right away. Yes, I sighed deeply. I slept very well, he answered contently, nudging his nose against my neck, filling my chest with a warm fuzzy feeling that I couldn't fight. Meanwhile, his hand went between my legs to massage the skin around my mound. Does it ache, baby girl? He asked, worried. Just a bit, I told him, and he got up immediately. I made a sound of protest, but he sat between my legs and spread them apart to see the state of my pussy. I watched him intently as he examined everything there. You're very sore, he frowned, running his fingers over the red marks. You should have stopped us last night when it got too much for you. I enjoyed it, I shrugged, but he scoffed and got up before applying a wet towel and the ointment between my legs. I sat back as he cleaned me first, taking his sweet time to wipe every nook and cranny before massaging me with that strange oil that felt cool to touch at first, but then slowly it numbed the pain. It instantly made me feel much better. Seeing the look of relief on my face, Marius seemed to be less worried. While he was tending to me, Caspian entered the small bedroom to check on us. Before I could greet him, he shot his brother a worried look, but Marius dismissed it by shaking his head. We need to be more careful when we go rough on her next time, Marius said. And Caspian grunted as he watched his brother massage me. Does that feel good, pussy cat? Caspian asked. Yes, I answered. But not as good as your cocks, I told them with a grin. But Marius still looked worried about me, and the look on Caspian's face was somewhat the same. Tell us when it hurts next time, okay? Caspian asked, pecking my lips, but I pouted at him. Even though I loved their doting nature, sometimes it annoyed me. It didn't hurt, I protested, but they wouldn't believe me. I wanted to tell them they were being too gentle with me. I was a werewolf too, just like them. Yes, I was still somewhat weak, but I wasn't as fragile as a human who wouldn't be able to bear two alpha cocks and knots at the same time. However, before I could say anything, the intercom beeped, and the pilot announced to prepare for landing. This got all of us in motion. I took a speedy shower in the tiny shower. I wanted to share it with Marius, but there was only room for one, and we needed to be quick. When I stepped out, Caspian had packed our stuff and was waiting for me outside the bedroom. I joined him there for a quick little breakfast. Marius joined us soon after. The rest of the landing and the travel to our hotel was blurry. Caspian and Marius got busy making calls as soon as we landed. I busied myself by checking in with the cyber team for any updates. Also, I checked on my computers through a laptop remotely connected to my system so I could always stay alert in case Erica wanted to make a second attempt at stealing the keys. When we reached the hotel, the city councilor of Kersas was already waiting for us there with all the information Marius had requested. All of us got to work immediately with that. At first, we searched through the list for any new residents. I looked for my sister's name, my mother's name, or any other alias that Erica could be using, but we didn't find anything significant. We searched through other databases too, but still got nothing. It was soon getting frustrating, but I wouldn't give up. I was going to catch that bitch no matter what. No matter how much time it took or how frustrating this pursuit got. As evening rolled in, we were still without anything, no leads or any clues whatsoever. The city councilor did his best, but beyond a certain point, he couldn't help us either. I checked my computers to see if Erica would get back to them, but nothing happened. Also, she hadn't fucked with any pack systems lately, which kind of got me tense. If Erica was silent, it could mean she was planning something big. This swelled the urgency in me. I came up with new ways to generate any leads on Erica, but after a day when we managed to come up with nothing, my determination was starting to falter. If we keep going like this, it might take forever, I groaned, staring at the computers. Marius sat beside me while Caspian was away to take care of some other business. However, I wasn't expecting him to return so quickly. Someone's here to meet us, Caspian declared as soon as he entered our hotel suite. His face had an irked look, but his shoulders looked taut. Rikkard, Marius growled on my side. 90. Caspian. What I had feared the most ended up happening. Rikkard came to see us as soon as he learned we were in Kersas. As soon as I told Lyra and Marius about it, their faces turned sour. Lyra looked slightly more anxious. Maybe I shouldn't have let her know about Rikkard. She was already stressed out enough because of her sister, and Rikkard was terrible enough by himself. Marius and I should have dealt with him alone, but I could tell that one of the reasons why Rikkard had shown up was to meet Lyra. He was curious about her, making me want to thrash him on the walls. I'll deal with him, Marius said, leaving Lyra's side. Is it going to be all right? She asked warily. You don't have to worry about him, baby girl, Marius assured her, but I could tell he doubted Rikkard himself. We had been expecting him to show up, but beyond that, we didn't know what else to expect from him. Rikkard was one of the most unpredictable men I had ever met. Whenever I met him, my senses were always on overdrive, analyzing everything about him to predict what he would do next. I had seen him rip off an alpha's throat at a diplomatic meeting over a simple disagreement. It was one of the incidents that had people calling him the Mad Alpha, but I didn't care much about him in the past because we avoided him like the plague. However, having Rikkard and my mate in the same building made me uneasy, and I could tell Marius felt the same way. I'll go with you, I chipped, and Marius nodded. If you need anything, simply text us, but don't show up or call us. We don't want Rikkard to meet you. He's a psycho, a misogynist psycho, Lyra snorted. Is it the misogynist trait that makes him the worst? I couldn't help but ask. Lyra shrugged. Does that mean it'd have been all right for you if he was only a psycho? I had to ask. Definitely, Lyra nodded. I can deal with psychos. I've dealt with a lot of them. Heck, I even grew up with one, and now she's out there fucking up my life while I try to find her. But a misogynist is worse than a psycho for me. Let's go now. I don't want him to come looking for us here, Marius urged, and I nodded. I'll see you soon, pussycat, I told her before pecking her lips. Don't leave the suite, and don't open the door until it's one of us, I told her, and she rolled her eyes. I'm not a child. Well, there's a misogynist psycho on the loose. Can't have him catch you, I shot at her, and Marius chuckled while Lyra glared at me. We'll be right back, baby girl. Don't go anywhere. Marius pecked her lips before the two of us finally left our suite. A tense silence stretched between us as we went down in the lift. Rikkard was waiting for us in the hotel lounge, looking casual, but we knew better than to let our guards down because of his unassuming facade. Rikkard greeted us by cocking an eyebrow at us. He looked around us as if searching for someone. I gritted my teeth. I had been right in assuming that he was partly here because of Lyra. You didn't bring your mate? He asked intently as Marius took the seat across Rikkard. I sat between them, a hand resting on the gun in my pocket. Why are you here, Rikkard? Marius asked him grimly. I wanted to ask you the same. Never have you two come this far. Is everything all right? Rikkard asked. There was a dangerous edge in his voice. Everything is all right, Marius answered blankly, but Rikkard smiled. Oh really? He smirked. Then, is this a vacation of sorts? Or a honeymoon? If so, you should have called me up. I have a lot of romantic sightseeing places in my territory your mate would have loved to see, Rikkard offered causally, and I exchanged a look with Matteo because I couldn't tell where he was going from here. Thanks for the offer, but we're all right here, I said dismissively. He leveled us with a dark look before finally getting to the topic. Did you find anything about Morgan? He asked. No, Marius and I answered at the same time. That means a yes, he smiled. It's very easy to read you two. We didn't find anything on Morgan. We're still looking for her, Marius explained coolly while I kept my face blank of any expression. That's why you're here, right? She's in Kersas, Rikkard concluded, sitting back and giving us a knowing look. He was trying to fuck with us. We were aware of this. Even though he was unpredictable, he still had some recognizable patterns. No, we're visiting our mate's family. That's all I told him. She's from Kersas. He asked. Damn, then I should definitely meet her, he urged. She's tired and resting. Some other time, Marius replied curtly, but Rikkard still didn't want to leave. He didn't say anything for a few seconds, and all three of us sat in a tense silence. I was mentally preparing for everything: a fight, an argument, or simply a jab at our pact matters. How did you find your mate? He asked after a long pause, surprising us both. Marius and I exchanged a look. Why do you want to know? I asked cautiously but with a casual tone. Rikkard shrugged and sat back, looking away briefly. There was something melancholic about the way his shoulders dropped at my question. I'm getting old, he sighed deeply, and I haven't found my mate yet. For a second I could sense the loneliness in his voice, and it reminded me of the time before Lyra strolled into our lives and blew up things. I knew the feeling of being mateless after everyone around you had found mates. Rikkard was a few years older than Marius, and if he hadn't managed to find a mate yet, he likely had none. Even though I was greatly glad that he wouldn't be able to further his crazy genes to the next generation, at the same time, it made me feel bad for him. Being mateless was nothing less of a curse. Rikkard looked severely cursed. Is that why you came here? Marius asked, slightly confused, because you wanted to know how we found our mate. Rikkard nodded, his face somber. All the hints of arrogance were gone from his face, and he looked defeated and lonely. This was the last thing I was expecting from him. Rikkard couldn't get more unpredictable than this. You're a few years younger than me, Rikkard told Marius, yet you managed to find a mate at this age. Do you think it's possible for me too? He asked, a hint of hope in his voice. Marius and I exchanged a puzzled look. How would I know that, Rikkard? Marius said. Just tell me, how did you find yours? That's all I am here for. Tell me how you found your mate. I'll figure something out from that. Or maybe not, but I need to know, Rikkard demanded. Well, I licked my lips and thought up a story. I exchanged a look with Marius before telling him a fake story. It was late in the evening when Rikkard finally left us. We had somehow managed to get him off our tail after assuring him that things could still work out for him. He just needed to be patient. It had worked on him surprisingly. Lyra was waiting for us when we finally went back to our suite. What took so long? She asked right away. Rickard's feeling the blues for getting old without a mate. He wanted to know if it's possible for him to find a mate at this age too if it worked out for Marius, I explained, and Lyra looked surprised. Seriously? Is that why that psycho came this far? To ask about mates? She asked. Didn't I say that he's unpredictable? I reminded her. It's a good thing he doesn't have a mate. The life of a woman has been spared, she said. But fuck him. I've done something while you two were gone, Lyra said. What is it? Marius asked, taking his seat back next to Lyra. I stood behind her, staring at her laptop. I posted an encrypted message publicly that my stolen servers were bound to pick up. In the message, I've asked her to meet me for the keys, Lyra explained gravely. And have you got any repos from her yet? I asked. Yes, she answered. 91. Lyra. I had been anxiously waiting for the brothers to arrive ever since I got the response from Erica. I hadn't expected her to respond to me in the first place, but I had taken the shot by posting a bait in a public server that my stolen servers were bound to pick up and notify her. Her response had come quickly, too quickly, and I couldn't help but think she had laid out a trap for me the same way I was doing for her right now. I was not expecting her to be sitting there idle with my servers. This was the first time we had communicated directly, which meant that Erica was now more willing to come out in the open. She was tired of hiding and indirectly creating more mess for me. She now wanted to be more direct. This was a good thing, but at the same time it made me anxious. Was this something she had planned for while keeping low for the past week? I couldn't help but wonder about this. Even though I was the one who had put up bait for her to take, I couldn't help but feel that it was I who had walked into some form of trap, and now I was leading my mates into it as well. Show me her response, Marius demanded, and I opened it for them to see. The first part of her message contained some coordinates on a map. I searched for the location to find out that it was an abandoned harbor outside the city. There was only one way to go there, but the road had been long blocked and abandoned because of the snow. So the best way to get there was by hiking there. I could go there alone. I had been definitely thinking far too ahead even though I hadn't talked to my mates about this. Should we send someone there to look for her? Caspian asked. She told me to go there alone or else she'd destroy my servers, I said, showing them the second part of her message that I had wanted to keep to myself, but I ended up showing it to them anyway because the brothers would find out one way or the other. You're not going anywhere alone, Marius growled, and Caspian agreed. I sighed deeply. I knew that they were going to react this way. I had seen this coming, but at the same time, I wanted to tell them that this was the only way I could get to Erica. This was my first and only chance to meet her and get my servers back. I couldn't fuck up this chance or else she'd fuck up my servers. I knew she would without thinking twice. Even though I knew that going there alone could be dangerous for me, I had no fucking choice. I had to go. But I couldn't convince the brothers about this. It'd be like driving an uphill slope. It was 2 against 1. I was never going to win the argument. I guess it was one of the major drawbacks of having 2 overly doting mates. We need to do something, I muttered, drumming my fingers on the table and looking at Erica's message. Her almost instant response told me that she was desperate to get the keys, even more so now because I had managed to lock up some of the systems before she had pulled the plug. I wish I had gotten more time that day. I could have managed to lock her out entirely. We'll think of something, Caspian said. When has she asked you to meet her? There's no time mentioned here. But I'm planning to go there tomorrow afternoon and see if she's there, I replied. You're not going there alone, Marius affirmed again, putting his hand heavily on my thigh as if to ingrain his words deeper into my flesh. What are we going to do? I asked Marius. We're going to come up with a plan and prepare accordingly. But you're not going there alone, Marius pressed. She'll destroy my servers if she gets to know that I brought you two along, I reminded him, but Marius shook his head at me. That talk is to scare you. I don't think Erica would destroy the servers so easily. She's putting herself at risk to get the keys. She values the servers a lot, Marius reasoned, and he was somewhat right. She's crazy. We can't be sure, I told them, but both looked adamant about not letting me go there alone. Fine. Then tell me what to do. I asked grumpily. Times like these grated on my nerves. Sensing my annoyance, Marius gently ran his hand over my thigh before wrapping his arm around my waist. We're just looking out for you, baby girl, he muttered, placing a kiss dangerously close to my lips. I wanted to push back but leaned into his touch. Behind me, I felt Caspian move my hair to the side and kiss my neck. We know you're impatient to catch your sister, pussy cat, but you need to understand that we don't want anything like that explosion to happen again. We almost lost you once. We don't want to go through that again. I sighed deeply at Caspian's words. It reminded me that I was still too used to thinking for myself and hardly considered their thoughts and emotions. The brothers were overprotective of me because of the explosion and me losing an arm. They deeply cared about me despite our fucked up past. They had put everything aside and accepted me in every way. I definitely should have paid more heed to their feelings. You're too precious for us, baby girl, Marius whispered before pecking my lips, and instantly I melted against him. Caspian's heated kisses on my neck weren't helping me at all. The brothers seemed to have figured out quickly how to make me say yes. Alright, I nodded. I wouldn't go there alone, but what are we going to do? I asked. It's time for some planning, Caspian said, and Marius grunted. 92. Lyra. The following day, we set out of the abandoned port at noon. It was a gloomy day and gently snowing. The hints of a storm lingered on the horizon. The brothers wanted me to postpone this to the next day when the weather was better, but there was no guarantee of that happening. The weather was unpredictable, and I didn't like to rely on its mood swings for my work. I had somehow convinced the brothers to go today after a lot of bickering and arguments last night. We drove as close as we could to the abandoned port with our small team of reinforcements whom Marius had flown in from the pack overnight. They had come prepared with weapons and whatnot for any ambush. By the time we reached the last edge of the snow-blocked road to the abandoned port, the snow had started falling harder. I could sense that the brothers were not pleased with this, but before they could suggest going back and coming back the next day, I hopped out of the SUV and took in my surroundings. The visibility was annoyingly low today. However, I could see the last bit of the road gradually swallowed by the snow. Ahead of me, there was nothing but snow as far as I could see. I'll have to walk northwest for a mile or two, I guess, I said after looking at the coordinates while Caspian stood beside me, gazing at the long stretch of snow. Meanwhile, Marius was busy instructing the reinforcement team. Caspian corrected me, and I clenched my teeth. The signal here is pretty bad. Communicating with the reinforcement would be a pain in the ass if anything goes wrong. We'll manage somehow, I suggested. Okay, I was overly optimistic here while the brothers were realistically dealing with the issue. I couldn't help it. I was growing restless to find Erica ever since I got the message from her yesterday. I put up another encrypted announcement last night to let her know I'd be here today to see her. She never responded to that. I didn't have a good feeling about it. If I were being honest with myself, I didn't have a good feeling about this whole thing. I woke up feeling uneasy today. I couldn't tell if it was because I slept at an odd angle last night while sandwiched between the brothers or if there was something off about today. I wanted to tap into my wolf's intuition, but she was unnaturally quiet today. That made me feel even more uneasy. The thought sent a shiver down my spine. I wasn't cold because of the weather. We were all wearing proper snow hiking gear, but it was the nervousness that was slowly starting to set in. I was finally going to see Erica after such a long time. I didn't have a good feeling about meeting her. I just wanted to have my servers back before she could misuse them. We need to start soon. The snow's falling harder, I pointed out, and Caspian grunted. Marius joined us soon so we could start our hike. You'll stay close to us, Lyra, Marius warned me before we started with our hike. I wanted to roll my eyes, but he continued. And if you're planning to do anything that's not included in the plan, then you'll inform us first. Yes, Caspian joined. You'll not put yourself at unnecessary risk. When the situation goes out of control, you'll call for us. All right, I grumbled, slightly annoyed at their pep talk but also deeply pleased because of their doting nature. We want your word, Lyra, Caspian demanded. I will not put myself in danger and call for help when things go wrong, I said sincerely. The two of them nodded before kissing me one by one. Caspian pecked my lips quickly, but Marius took me into an intense kiss, by the end of which I was pretty breathless. Well, I needed that kiss to calm myself down internally. I was on the verge of hyperventilating. We've got your back, baby girl, Marius whispered against my lips, and I nodded, craving more than just a kiss at that moment. But we needed to set out soon because the weather was getting more and more terrible. The three of us set out on a 2-mile hike through the snow. At first, the snowing worsened and Marius and Caspian were already planning to go back, But fortunately, the snow lightened a bit, and we could continue. At first, it felt like we were waking to nowhere. Vast stretches of snow lay around us without a thing in sight. We followed the compass until we could finally start to see the ruins of the old port. Massive abandoned warehouses came into sight. All their roofs had collapsed because of the weight of the snow, and their walls were cracking. A few frozen containers laid here and there. The three of us kept wandering through the ruins of the old port until we reached close to the exact coordinates. Marius and Caspian hid away while I continued walking to the coordinates. It took me to a vast clearing which seemed to be used to park the containers that were either newly unloaded or were about to be loaded onto the ships. Up ahead of me, I could finally see the frozen arms of those huge cranes used to load and unload the shipping containers. I could imagine the sea somewhere beyond those arms. I couldn't see it due to the low visibility and the snow. I stood in that clearing and continued to take in my surroundings, wondering where Erica was and where she could have hidden my servers. Were they in one of those containers in the distance? My servers were huge and heavy. I wondered how she had carried them here. I was thinking about the whole operation's logistics when I heard snow crunching behind me. I turned around with the speed of lighting to see a lone figure walking towards me. It wasn't Caspian or Marius. No, I didn't have to guess who it was. My hand lingered above the pocket in which I had my gun while I watched her close the distance between us. The lone figure undid its face scarf when it was a few meters away from me, and instantly, I was staring at a familiar pair of electric blue eyes that I had inherited from my mother. Erica stared at me for a whole minute before finally speaking. I hate it that we look alike so much. 93. Lyra. You're supposed to say I'm glad to see you or something along the lines when you meet someone, I told Erica, and she shrugged. I'm not glad to see you. But I'm glad you're here, Lyra. Are you glad to see me? She asked, flashing me her cryptic, unsettling smile that always made me shiver. I'm as glad as you are to see me, I replied coolly, and her smile grew. She regarded me for another minute while silence stretched between us. I couldn't help but stare at her and see how she had changed over the years. She was taller and slender than me. We had the same face and eyes, but some features differed. She didn't have the sharp canines like me because she was human. Of the two of us, I looked most like our mother because of my dark hair. Meanwhile, she had wavy brunette hair that she seemed to have inherited from her biological father. I could have never imagined that we'd meet again, she spoke, something unfamiliar in her voice. I thought you died, I told her, and she shrugged. What do you do now apart from theft and impersonation? I asked her, and she barked a wild laugh. I've committed myself to piracy, she said proudly, and I narrowed my eyes at her. Piracy? I echoed out loud. That was very unexpected but not surprising. Of course, whatever she had committed herself to required her to do illegal things. As the saying goes, the apple doesn't fall far from the tree. I wanted to laugh at that, but at the same time I was wary of everything about her, including every word she uttered. Yes, when I ran from the orphanage, a sailor offered me a job at his ship. He turned out to be a pirate, and I quickly learned the ropes and I climbed them until I got my ship and crew. Wow, congratulations, I said genuinely, and she flashed me a proud smile. Thank you, she smiled. But how does a pirate go from robbing ships to stealing servers? I asked her. And how the fuck did you even know that I'm Morgan? And how the fuck did you find where I store my servers? Why didn't you steal all of them while you were at it? I couldn't help but ask her all these questions. Her eyes flashed with excitement at my questions. Those are very interesting questions. She gave me her unsettling smile again. You see, the sea is an interesting place. It has no boundaries, no laws, absolutely nothing. A promising place for those who are running away from something like you. I asked, and for a moment, that crazy smile faltered and her eyes hardened. Apart from piracy, I sometimes like to host a guest or two on my ship. Guests who are on the run from any authority or foes on land, she explained. I once hosted this guest named Kersas丨. I recognized the name instantly and sucked in a breath. Of all the people, Kersas丨had been the one who knew my whole truth. He knew I was Morgan because, well, there was a time when I worked with him, but things turned sour between us and we parted ways. Kind of. Kersas wasn't happy with me and tried to fuck up things for me. I had to hire so many hitmen to kill him, but he always found a way to escape, and once he disappeared for almost a few years. Now, I could guess where he had been hiding during those years. I had only managed to get him killed a couple of years ago. Well, Salakis taught me a thing or two while he was at sea with me dodging your hitman. It's such a shame you killed eventually. We were such good friends. He had a good dick too and was pretty generous with it, Erica said, and I clenched my teeth. I had always been paranoid about Salakis giving away my identity. Still, I also knew that he wouldn't risk doing that because giving away my identity meant him outing himself as well because he had been my partner in crime for a long time and had committed crimes far worse than me. Bringing any spotlight to me meant he'd be subjected to the same spotlight just by being associated with me. However, I could have never imagined in my wildest dreams that the two people I hated the most would somehow find their way to each other and conspire against me. I had always considered myself invincible, but I realized I wasn't as invincible as I had thought after the explosion. Maybe somewhere along the line, I got too blinded by my pride and ego to consider such risks. I had always worked hard to be the best at my craft and maintain my position at the very top, but I now knew that the place at the top was very slippery. One wrong step and I was entirely at the bottom again, at the mercy of my enemies. Salakis had to die, I told her blandly, and just to fuck with her I added, I hope you didn't fuck him raw. He had some disease in his dick. The unsettling smile was instantly wiped from her face, and she finally glared at me. Her glare made me oddly feel more relaxed and welcoming than her creepy smile. You sound like you have enough experience with diseased dick, Erica shot back. You're fucking those King brothers, aren't you? She asked with a smirk, and I shrugged, seeming nonchalant, but deep down, it terrified me that she knew what I had going on with Marius and Caspian. I wanted to keep her far away from my mates. It's a shame you didn't bring them to meet their sister-in-law, she purred. Or did you bring them with you? Are they hiding somewhere here? She poked and I pressed my lips in a thin line about to snap. Let's get down to business quick. I steered the conversation away from the brothers because it wasn't making me feel any good. I knew they were hiding somewhere, and I wanted them to remain there and stay out of harm's way as much as possible. Where are my servers, Erica? I need to see them first, I demanded. Did you bring the keys with you? She asked, her tone very much businesslike. Yes, I hissed. All right then, follow me, she said, turning around before tracing her way back to the containers on the other end of the clearing. I glanced back in the direction where I was sure my mates were hiding. After thinking about it briefly and feeling the gun in my pocket, I followed Erica hesitantly. 94. Lyra. I traced Erica's footsteps to the way she was taking me. When she wasn't paying attention to me, I glanced back over my shoulder again to see if my mates were following me. However, I couldn't make out much in the snow. The snow started to fall again while strong winds blew from the direction of the frozen sea. Even though I was well insulated with the thick fox fur jacket and 2 more layers of thick sweaters underneath it, I was still shivering. On the other hand, Erica seemed unaffected by the cold despite wearing fewer clothes. I followed her through the maze of containers, fully alert, with my hand on the gun just in case she tried to pull a trick on me. How did you get here? I had to ask her because it was an important question bugging me for a while. How the fuck did she manage to transport those heavy servers in this snow? While on our way to the port, we didn't see any tracks of another vehicle that might have headed this way. Or maybe the heavy snow might have covered up the tracks. Still, it was baffling to me. You'll see, Erica responded, walking without a stop. I followed her but maintained a safe distance between us. You better be leading me to my servers, I told her. I have them. I'm assuring you. I've tried my best to take good care of them. I know how much leverage they grant me over you, Erica spoke. Why? I still had to ask. This was something that had been bugging me for the whole night. No, actually, it had been bugging me ever since I found out that she was the one who stole my servers and impersonated me. Why do this? We went our ways. Wait, are you mad at me for killing your casual fuck? I asked. Nah, as you said, Salakis was just a casual fuck who paid well for the cruise and my services. I wouldn't put so much effort for him though, Erica said. I have my reasons, what are those? I pressed. We took a few turns around a couple more containers. I tried to remember where she was taking me, but I wouldn't have to worry too much about it. I had my footsteps in the snow. I wondered if my mates were following them. To start with, it was boredom, she replied. Bitch, really? I snapped. You're the bitch here. She turned around abruptly and snapped back at me. I jumped back, my finger on the trigger, examining her stance for any sign of threat. Literally, you are a bitch. How does it feel like to be a mutt? She asked, giving me a judgmental look. It triggered something inside me, a primary memory so ingrained that I still remembered how it made me feel even after forgetting it. It made me feel dirty, unacceptable. Less than anything, and almost like a bug everyone wanted to squish. A very vague memory flashed in my head. I was barely a child and couldn't remember anything. But this particular memory had stuck with me. It was of my mother treating me differently after figuring out that I wasn't like her, that I was a werewolf. She used to treat me very differently than Erica, as if I had a disease that needed to be contained. It always baffled me to think about it. My mother fucked a werewolf and she ended up giving birth to one. Why did it surprise her that much? I didn't know much about my biological father apart from the fact that he was a werewolf and sold drugs. Our mother's taste in men needed to be lauded. Erica's biological father was a criminal of sorts too. So yeah, no wonder why she turned out to be like this. Do you bark when you phase? Her condescending question snapped me back to the present, making my wolf growl. No, but I can tear you into pieces in the blink. Would you like a demonstration? I offered. Erica smiled at me wickedly, but something dangerous lingered in her eyes. Oh, I'd love to see you turn into an actual bitch, she said, but we must keep going. Your servers are waiting for us. With that, she turned around and started walking again. Was it only boredom that led you to do this? I continued to ask. Well, curiosity too. I wanted to know if you've become as fucked up as me, she replied, and for once I heard some real emotion in her voice. It was the pain that both of us bore, the pain that our mother had gifted us as soon as she brought us into this world. Up until now, I'd been seeing her as a purely evil bitch who wanted to see me fall at any cost, but somehow, her answer humanized her a bit. She was as broken as me, but in different ways. You know, Erica, it's not our fault we ended up like this. We can change. Well, I'm trying to now, I said. Well, I was trying to change after finding out my mates. I needed to change to be with them in harmony. I had already lost an arm for not changing soon enough. Oh really? Tell me, how is it that you are trying to change? Erica asked. We took a turn and reached the end of the maze of containers. Surprisingly, I saw a small ship moored in the distance. It didn't look abandoned though, and was big enough to carry 2 containers. I wondered if she had come here on that ship. Tell me, how do you try not to resent all the normal people around you and how easy their life seems to be? Tell me how you don't just want to burn everything down because we both know that's how it will satisfy us. She demanded. I could hear all the suppressed anger surfacing in her voice. Well, I tried to burn down things. It ended up burning me in return, so I know it's not worth it, I told her. She gave me a long hard look before turning around and rounding the last container until we reached the other side. Is that your ship? I couldn't help but ask. Yes, that's my baby, she said. I call her Princella. She's cute, but she can fire torpedoes. It was a pricey update, but it was totally worth it. Wow, was all I could say as I glanced at the ship. It looked pretty unassuming. So, can I see my servers now? I stopped as I turned the corner of the last container. Erica was already inside it, waiting for me. I stopped in my tracks when I saw my servers. I wanted to go and hug them instantly with joy, but all the explosives stacked around my servers froze me in my place. At the top of my servers was a massive screen with a timer counting down already. Now either give me the keys, or we're gonna see fireworks in the snow. Erica smiled wickedly, sounding more excited about the fireworks than the keys. If you're curious about the story of Caspian and Marius, don't forget to hit that subscribe button for more updates.